So when I graduated seminary, I started looking for a position and really felt God was leading us to a church where I would be the head pastor. So as I was looking, I kind of still felt like that might be where I was supposed to go, but also began to open my options and explore other positions out there. It can be kind of hard for one coming out of seminary. A lot of people want somebody with experience, and so that was a little humbling moment throughout the process. But then I found the position that was open at Lombard CRC, and I really was attracted to this position because it fit a lot of the experience that I have had in working with middle school, high school, and young adults. And this position really was looking for somebody who had worked with students but also could relate to adults. And I've always found, just personally, that I connect well with people who are older than I am. My friends have always been older than I am. I have a group of guys that I play golf with all the time that most of them are retired. And so the position, I think for that reason, really was attractive. And so I thought, let's check it out. Let's send in my resume, start the interview process. And so in my first interview, I realized that the position was not very detailed. And to be honest, that was terrifying because I saw that it seemed, at least from my perspective, that Lombard CRC wanted a new position, wanted some change, but also hadn't thought through what that would look like, or the implications maybe behind that. And so the funny story is, when I finished that interview, I left my home office, walked to the living room where my wife Carissa was, and I said to her, this isn't going to work out. I said to her, they haven't really thought through all these things. And so she actually is the one that kind of talked me off the cliff, because I was thinking, this is probably not the right position for me. But I agreed to have a second interview because I thought, maybe I could help them maybe figure out a little bit more. It wasn't the most humble thought, to be honest. But I went to that second interview. But right before that second interview, Sam Zichterman, one of the people on the search committee, sent me the vision for not only this position, but the vision for the church, the direction for the church. And when I read through it, I realized they had thought through so much of what they wanted out of this position, so much of where they felt God was leading, even down to a timeline plan that stretched from 90 days all the way to 7 years down the line, what they wanted out of this vision that they had done, this vision work that they had done. And so we began to talk about what it would look like. And this is November, really it starts in November of 2023. And later on in November, we came down and did our interview. But there's a really interesting story that happens in the days leading up to coming to Lombard to do the interview. I'll let Carissa share that story.
Well, the couple days, I think it was 2 days before we came over to do the in-person meeting everybody and Bobby doing the sermon, I just wasn't feeling well, and I hadn't been feeling well for a while, and Bobby was like, I think you might be pregnant. So I took a test, and surprise, I was completely unplanned and didn't know it was going to happen. And so it was kind of a freak out moment of, okay, God, what is happening here? What's going on? This is not what we had in our life plan, but you know what's going on. And so I hope this weekend goes well, and I hope that, you can make it very clear to us whether this is the right position for Bobby and whether we should do this move with our family or not, especially with a new baby on the way. But it was a good weekend. When we came, I feel like God, every single conversation that we had with people was affirming, and we had a lot of questions that we kind of spoke to one another beforehand and in the back like behind the scenes, but we never asked people. But in all the conversations we had that weekend, all of those questions were answered, and they were answered in an affirming way. And so I feel like God really used that weekend to help make us more comfortable and be like, yeah, I think this is where God is calling us. Because it was just, the reservations we had got pushed aside, or the questions that we had got answered. And just some of the holes and the needs and the desires that we heard from the council, from the church, were things that I feel like Bobby really fit, our history of working together in ministry, and his passions and his gifts. It kind of aligned with some of the things that were the desires of the church. And so that was really affirming weekend for us.
And I think throughout this process up to today, over the last, I guess, what has it been now? 8 months of throughout this process, just more and more, I think God has affirmed that this is where we're supposed to be. So for instance, again, this position is designed, and this position is designed for somebody who can bring the congregation together intergenerationally, and so not only has kind of my own gifts been brought to the forefront in relating to people, but for instance, I think a big part of what that is going to look like is people coming together and serving together. And Carissa and I have led almost 20 mission trips together around the country that has brought different ages together. Took a trip down to New Orleans in 2000, I think it was 2015, where we took multiple families, about 55 people total, age range from 1 all the way up to 80, and just seeing God work through that, and seeing again the power that can happen through God when the whole church comes together. And another big thing that Chris and I have been passionate for when we were in our last church was creating and being part of a close-knit community of believers. And I think the more I understand this position, the more I understand the vision, I think that's a huge desire of this church. And so we're so excited to be a part of that, to join in this process. And so bringing our family, those who are here and those who will be here really soon, is just such an exciting part for us to see. We have a 7-year-old daughter and a 2.5-year-old daughter, and seeing the community here embrace them. Just yesterday, we had a family over to our house for pancakes at the church, and seeing our girls just loving to interact with the families from the church has just been just a blessing, and just warms my heart anytime that I see it. So I think, again, just seeing, I'm excited to see where God takes this. It is definitely a big time of change for our lives. We moved to Lombard in April of this year, April 3rd. So only a couple of months ago. The baby is due in T-minus a week and a half. And so within a couple of months, we're having a pretty big change in our lives. But again, we know that God is there, God has been there, and God will be there throughout this whole process. And so we're nervous about certain things, but knowing that we're exactly where God has called us to be. Mm-hmm. I always say there's not a more comforting place to be than exactly where God has called you to be. So we're loving it.
I feel like another part of the journey that we've had is we kind of talked a lot about feeling like we're in this desert place for a while, because it took a while for Bobby to go through seminary, and then you're in this unknown of what's going to come next, and this kind of waiting period of trying to listen to God and see what he's going to do. And so I think we kind of described that time of after seminary, before finding a position as like that desert time and wandering and just not quite knowing where God's going to lead us or when it's going to happen. And so finding out that you're going to have a baby in that, I feel like was just God's gift to us of an assurance and a gift that I didn't know that I needed to be comforted by, because I think that this change was really big for me. I've never lived farther away from my family than I do now, and so just having that gift of assurance of God knew what I needed, God knew what you needed as a family, and it's exciting now because I feel like we're past the desert stage, entering into the promised land where, we're going to see how God has fulfilled his promises to us. And you see, I think back to when Bobby and I started dating, and I just started to learn who he was and what his desires were. And over the years of him going to Kuiper and then going to Calvin Sem and just seeing how God has shaped you into the person you are today and the gifts that he's given you and strengthened in you, it's exciting now to see how God is going to use those, especially in this position and in this new community. And so I'm excited to feel like, we know God. We see the desires here at Lombard to serve and to have relationships and to work in, the intergenerational part of it to us is very exciting because we love that. We love the inclusion of including all ages. And so I'm excited to see where that goes.